This is a geographical position of Russia on the map of the world. Besides the main territory of the country, there is also a separated region in the Eastern Europe on the Baltic Sea. Talking about the population of about 142 million, unevenly spread around the country with most in the European part, we cannot ignore that Russia is a multinational country, including more than 100 ethnic groups. There is an important issue as nationality influences culture, so Russia can be called a multicultural country, and we have to take it into consideration. But there are some common cultural values of all Russian people. Russians are a very proud nation. If you come to our country, you will definitely see lots of memorials dedicated to the Second World War. The 9th of May is one of the biggest national holidays. All of these reflects how important that victory for everyone is, because almost every family lost its members during the Second World War. This previous point leads to the following, that Russians value respect. Since our childhood we are taught that we have to respect our parents and grandparents, but not only close family members, but we show respect in different social contexts as well. For instance, we respect the authority of our teachers. As an example, we show our respect to elderly people, especially the veterans of the Second World War. But despite of being proud of the history, or say great writers of our country, or scientists, musicians and composers, sportsmen, and by the achievements such as going outer space, or the victory in the Second World War, and being respectful, Russians are constantly criticizing their country and the government. Although at the same time they love their country. So patriotism is not a value in Russian culture, but this is a special Russian patriotism. The country itself is considered as the motherland. The patriotism is expressed in love to Russian nature, birch trees, in other words, to everything that touched the souls of Russians. But the way the country is governed has been always criticized. However, it's highly important to mention here that Russians tend to criticize themselves, but do not like being criticized. Another important issue in Russian culture is education. Russians are known to be a well-educated nation, so higher education is considered to be important for everybody. And this is how a foreign visitor can absorb a lot of universities around Russian cities. Of course, we need to mention some common personal values. They are also important for Russian people. They are harmonious life, money, social relationships like having friends and family, and happiness.
Foreigners have lots of wrong stereotypes about Russian life. It is hardly worth saying today that contemporary life in Russia has very little to do with playing the balalaika amongst matryoshkas and samovars, or the streets where bears supposedly wander. All these stories are just myths. Russian people, especially youth, are interested in various activities. The most exciting and popular one in summer is camping, where everyone admires the beauty and grace of Russian nature. Russia is one of the coldest countries in the world. In most regions, winter lasts for 4 to 5 months, and in the north 10. Even in Moscow, which is situated in the middle belt, frosts of about 20-30 degrees are rather frequent. That's why Russian people are quite good in winter sport activities. At the Orthodox christening, Orthodox believers recall the day when Jesus Christ came to the river Jordan and was christened in the river. Shortly, water becomes blessed. Practically, it happens in January, and even if the temperature is below 30 degrees, minus 30 degrees, it is not taken into consideration. It's still January, the middle of winter. There have always been some people, recreational ice swimmers, who dip into ice water without any connection to any religion. Some do it for fun, some believe it improves health. They are called walruses. Russians are also big fond of live performances at theaters, and since tickets are affordable, they enjoy attending opera, musical, ballet, drama. The theater culture was developed during the Soviet times, when tickets were sold through schools and enterprises. Music has always been an important part of Russian culture. That's why there are so many talented Russian musicians and composers famous in different countries all over the world. Russians are very traditional, and hospitality is one of their strongest traditions. This girl in the traditional Russian clothing is presenting a loaf of bread symbolizing welcome or hospitality. The traditional bread and salt ceremony is still sometimes practiced. Russians often visit each other's homes without a special invitation. Just let the host know about your plans in advance, and they'll be very happy to accept you. You will always be offered something to eat or drink when visiting Russians at their homes. Just like it would be rude to leave a guest without a treat, it is considered rude to make a visit without a gift for the hosts. Russians even have an expression that literally means to come with empty hands. It is used to describe guests who didn't bring anything to the hosts. You don't have to buy expensive souvenirs when being a guest. A box of chocolates or a bottle of wine will make a good gift. If you are visiting a family with the children, make sure to bring a treat for the kids, a candy, a chocolate bar, or fruits. What you see in this picture is typical Russian dacha, the house in the countryside. Russian dacha isn't something you'll find in other countries. Go to France, US, or China, it's either villas or farms. Dachas are sort of a crossbreed between the two. In Soviet times, people used dachas to grow fruits and vegetables. The stores were not plentiful, to say the least. Today, when things are different, dacha is a place for rest and relaxation, a chance to escape the big city. It is a quiet retreat. Finally, dacha usually means you'll have a chance to taste delicious Russian shashlik. In case you don't know, shashlik is a Caucasian dish that's been widely adopted in Russia. Shashlik is not a meal. It is a tradition, a whole ritual. Women are not allowed to prepare it, sorry. It's men that set up the bonfire and do the cooking. And then, when the meat is ready, it's time for stories, jokes, and some wine. Russians still get married quite early at the age 20-25. Traditionally, the wedding lasts 2 days. It is considered to be a bad luck for bride and groom to see each other prior to the wedding celebration. Before the wedding ceremony, in order to get the bride, the groom, surrounded by relatives and friends, has to go through funny, embarrassing challenges. When bride and groom unite, the celebration begins. The birth of children means that one of the spouses will force to temporarily leave work. Most often, it's the mothers who choose to do it. However, many families receive the support of grandmothers. It's very common in Russia for a grandmother to look after children while their parents are at work. Knowing that kids are being taken good care of, parents can work worry-free.
We would like to tell you a little bit about doing business in Russia. It's very important to be familiar with Russian culture to understand business environment and build better partnerships. Russian companies tend to be driven by one strong central figure who will make strategic decisions with little or no consultation with anyone other than a handful of close trusted advisors. Therefore, when dealing with potential clients or partners in Russia, it is absolutely essential to make sure that the right person is being dealt with. To avoid wasting time and resources, business partners should go straight to the top. Business in Russia is mainly done through connections, meaning it is always beneficial to have friends in government offices. Gifts are accepted but not required or expected. However, they are a good way to establish positive personal relations with business partners and are always appreciated. As it has been stated, management tends to be centralized and directive. The boss, especially the big boss, is expected to issue direct instructions for subordinates to follow. Little consultation will be expected from people lower down the company hierarchy. Indeed, too much consultation from a senior manager could be seen as a sign of weakness and lack of decisiveness. Delegation usually has a form of managers giving precise instructions to subordinates who are expected to perform their allocated tasks with little or no discussion. Many Westerners complain of a lack of initiative from local Russian staff, whilst Russian staff often states that there is a lack of clear,
unambiguous advice from expatriate managers. So there is a lot of miscommunication between Russians and foreign managers. Although there is one thing you might want to know before going to Russia, Russians always shake hands after passing through the threshold of the door frame. People should never attempt to shake hands at the door before they go through the door. This is considered to be bad manners and bad luck. Also, business partners must learn and memorize the full names of the Russians with whom they will be dealing. Russians have 3 names: first name, name of their father, and last name. In business situation, visitors should address their Russian colleagues by all 3 names unless they say differently. In terms of punctuality, a foreigner is always expected to be on time, but the host may be late by 5 or 10 minutes. This is common. Business meetings are usually appointed beforehand. They are usually accompanied by refreshments like tea, coffee, and water. As might be expected in a country where most managers are autocratic in style, meetings are often for the purpose of information dissemination rather than for the open debate of current business issues. Formal meetings are often held to ratify decisions which have been made elsewhere and to give clear instruction or key tasks to be performed. Formal meetings tend to be very structured and serious and should be treated accordingly. Humor is almost never used in such situations. During dinner business meetings, visitors should never refuse food or alcohol unless they have a serious health problem that prevents them from eating or drinking certain things, as it's considered to be disrespectful to refuse offered drinks and food. Russian business etiquette dictates that people should not begin eating until the host does. How do Russian people work in teams? Teams work best together when the relationships among the group are close. Once a team has been established and is working well together, it is probably best to keep the team intact for as long as possible. Moving the whole team from project to project rather than developing a fresh team for every situation is most reasonable. The team leader is expected to play a main role and to issue precise detailed instructions and then supervise ongoing process. We would also like to talk a little bit about communication in Russia. English language levels vary enormously in Russia. Many young interpreters have a fluent command of not only English, but often several other European languages. However, in small cities, it is not unusual to meet business people who have little or no foreign language skills. Therefore, it's important to always have an interpreter if you have a business meeting, just in case there are difficulties in communication. Russians are not big on compromising, as this is seen as a sign of weakness. There tends to be very little visual or verbal feedback during meetings in Russia. People listen silently and with no obvious body language being displayed. Russians will tend to wait and think before responding to a point made to them. Patience is the key in negotiating in Russian. Up until this day, women and men are not equal in business in Russia. Although a high percentage of the Russian workforce is female, there are very few women in senior management positions. This situation shows little sign of changing other than in some of the offices of major multinational companies in Russia. Western women working in Russia will be showered with old-fashioned courtesies, but may find themselves ignored in meetings and treated as inferior in rank to male colleagues, where they are or whether they are not. Moreover, in Russia, women do not normally expect to be greeted during introductions, but it is changing slowly as more people travel. It is appropriate to always address women with their last name. Clothing is usually formal. Both men and women wear business suits for official occasions. Dresses and skirts for women, as well as high-heel shoes, are very common. Russian businessmen pay much attention to clothing, as it is considered to be a reflection of one's success and prosperity. Finally, we would like you to know that Russians are very forgiving to their colleagues who do not know Russian culture and will overlook many things. But they will greatly appreciate the foreigner who comes to their country and knows a bit about Russian business etiquette. This may help the business travel in many ways.